The Devil's Church. Machado de Assis. Chapter 1. A Vamoritic Idea. An old Benedictine manuscript tells us that the devil, one day, had the idea of founding a church. Although his profits were continuous and large, he felt humiliated by the modest role he had played for centuries, without organization, without rules, without canons, without ritual, without anything. He lived, as it were, on divine remnants, on human carelessness and obsequies. Nothing fixed, nothing regular. Why wouldn't he have his church? A devil's church was the effective means of combating other religions, and destroying them at once. So, then, to a church, he concluded. Scripture against scripture, breviary against breviary. I will have my mass, with plenty of wine and bread, my homilies, bulls, novenas and all the other ecclesiastical apparatus. My creed will be the universal nucleus of the spirits, my church a tent of Abraham. And then, while other religions fight and divide, my church will be unique. I will not find before me neither Mohammed nor Luther. There are many ways to state it, there is only one to deny everything. Saying this, the devil shook his head and stretched out his arms, with a magnificent and manly gesture. Then he remembered to go to God to communicate the idea to him, and to challenge him. He looked up, his eyes alight with hatred, raw with vengeance, and said to himself, "Come on, it's time." And fast, flapping its wings, with such a roar that it shook all regions of the abyss, it tore out of the shadows into the infinite blue. Chapter 2. Between God and the Devil. God was gathering an old man when the devil arrived in heaven. The seraphim that beautified the newcomer, they immediately arrested him, and the devil stood at the entrance with his eyes on the Lord. "What do you want from me?" asked this one. "I do not come for your servant Faust," replied the devil, laughing, "but for all Fausts of the century and the centuries." "Explain yourself." "Sir, the explanation is easy, but allow me to say to you, first gather this good old man, give him the best place, order that the finest zithers and lutes receive him with the most divine choirs." "Do you know what he did?" asked the Lord, his eyes full of sweetness. "No, but he's probably one of the last to come to you. It doesn't take long for the sky to look like an empty house, because of the high price. I will build a cheap inn. In 2 words, I am going to found a church. I'm tired of my disorganization, my casual and adventurous reign. It is time for the final and complete victory. And so I came to tell you this, with loyalty, so that you won't accuse me of dissimulation. Good idea, don't you think? You came to say it, not to legitimize it, warned the Lord. "You are right," said the devil, "but self-love likes to hear the applause of the masters. The truth is that in this case it would be the applause of a defeated master, and such a demand. Sir, I descend to earth, I will lay my cornerstone. Go. Do you want me to come and announce the completion of the work? It's not necessary, just tell me right now why, tired of your disorganization for so long, you only thought about founding a church now?" The devil smiled with a certain air of derision and triumph. He had some cruel idea in his mind, some scathing remark in his memory bag, something that, in that brief moment of eternity, made him believe himself superior to God himself. But he collected the laughter, and said, "I have only now concluded an observation, begun some centuries ago, and that is that the virtues, daughters of heaven, are in great numbers comparable to queens, whose velvet robes ended in cotton fringes. Why, I propose to pull them out by that fringe, and bring them all to my church. Behind them will come those of pure silk." "Old rhetorician," murmured the Lord. "I looked good. Many bodies that kneel at your feet, in the temples of the world, where the frames they used under the skirt of the living room in the street, their faces are dyed with the same paint, the handkerchiefs smell of the same smells, the pupils sparkle with curiosity and devotion between the holy book and the mustache of sin. Behold the art or the indifference, at least with which this gentleman puts in public letters the benefits he liberally scatters, whether clothes or boots, or coins, or any of these necessaries of life. But I don't want to seem that I dwell on small things. I'm not talking, for example, about the placidity with which this judge of the brotherhood, in the processions, piously carries your love and commendation to his chest. I'm going to higher business. At this the seraphim fluttered their wings heavy with weariness and sleep. Miguel and Gabriel looked at the Lord with a pleading look. God stop the devil. You are vulgar, which is the worst thing that can happen to a spirit of your kind, replied the Lord. Everything you say is said and dictated by the moralists of the world. It is worn-out matter, and if you have neither strength nor originality to renew a worn-out matter, it is better for you to shut up and retire. Look, all my legions show on their faces the vivid signs of the boredom you give them. This same old man looks sick, and do you know what he did? I already told you no. After an honest life, he died a sublime death. Caught in a shipwreck, he was going to save himself on a board, but he saw an engaged couple, in the prime of life, who were already struggling with death. He gave them the lifeline and plunged into eternity. No audience, the water in the sky above. Where do you find the cotton fringe there? Lord, I am, as you know, the spirit that denies. Do you deny this death? I deny everything. Misanthropy can take on the guise of charity, to leave life to others, for a misanthrope is really to annoy them. Rhetorical and subtle, exclaimed the Lord. Go, go, found your church, calls all virtues, gathers all fringes, summons all men. But, go. In vain the devil tried to say something more. God had imposed silence on him. The seraphim, at a divine sign, filled the sky with the harmonies of their chants. The devil suddenly felt that he was in the air. He folded his wings, and, like lightning, fell to the earth. Chapter 3. The Good News to Men. Once on earth, the devil didn't waste a minute. He hastened to put on his Benedictine robe, as a habit of good reputation, and began to spread a new and extraordinary doctrine, with a voice that resounded in the bowels of the century. He promised his disciples and faithful the delights of the earth, all the glories, the most intimate delights. He confessed that he was the devil, but he confessed it to rectify the notion that men had of him and to disprove the stories that the old women told about him. Yes, I am the devil, he repeated, not the devil of sulphurous nights, of sleeping tales, terror for children, but the true and unique devil, the very genius of nature, to whom that name was given to keep him from the hearts of men. See me kind or graceful. I am your real father. Come on, take that name, invented for my blemish, make it a trophy and a flag, and I will give you everything, 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 everything. Come to wake up the indifferent, to gather, in short, the crowds at your feet. And they came, and as soon as they came, the devil proceeded to define the doctrine. The doctrine was what could be in the mouth of a spirit of denial. As for substance, because, as regards form, it was sometimes subtle, other times cynical and blatant. He claimed that the accepted virtues should be replaced by others, which were natural and legitimate. Pride, lust, laziness were rehabilitated, and so was avarice, which declared itself to be no more than the mother of thrift, with the difference that the mother was robust, and the daughter a scrawny one. Anger had the best defense in Homer's existence. Without the rage of Achilles, there would be no Iliad. Muse, sing the wrath of Achilles, son of Peleus. The same was said of gluttony, which produced the best pages of Rabelais, and many good lines of Hyssop, a virtue so superior that no one remembers Lucullus' battles, but his suppers. It was gluttony that really made him immortal. But, even putting aside these reasons of a literary or historical nature, to only show the intrinsic value of that virtue, who would deny that it was much better to feel good delicacies in the mouth and belly, in large copies, than the bad pieces, or the saliva of fasting? For his part, the devil promised to replace the vine of the Lord, a metaphorical expression, with the vine of the devil, a direct and true expression, since he would never lack the fruit of the most beautiful strains in the world. As for envy, he coldly preached that it was the chief virtue, source of infinite prosperity, precious virtue, which came to supply all the others, and to the talent itself. As for envy, he coldly preached that it was the main virtue, the source of infinite prosperity, precious virtue, which came to supply all the others, and to the talent itself. As for envy, he coldly preached that it was the main virtue, the source of infinite prosperity, precious virtue, which came to supply all the others, and to the talent itself. Crowds rushed after him excitedly. The devil instilled in them, with great strokes of eloquence, a whole new order of things, changing the notion of them, making the perverse ones love and the healthy ones detest. Nothing is more curious, for example, than the definition he gave of fraud. He called it the man's left arm, the right arm was strength, and he concluded, many men are left-handed, that's all. Now, he didn't require everyone to be left-handed, he was not exclusive. That some were left-handed, others right-handed, he accepted all but those who were nothing. The most rigorous and profound demonstration, however, was that of mercantilism. A casuist of the time even confessed that it was a monument of logic. Mercantilism, said the devil, was the exercise of a right superior to all rights. If you can sell your house, your ox, your shoes, your hat, things that are yours for a legal and legal reason, but that, in any case, are outside you, how can you not sell your opinion, your vote, your word, your faith, things that are more than yours, because they are your own conscience, that is, yourself? To deny it is to fall into the absurd and the contradictory. For aren't there women who sell their hair? Can't a man sell some of his blood to transfuse it to another anemic man? And will the blood and hair, physical parts, have the privilege that is denied to the character, to the moral portion of man? Thus demonstrating the principle, the devil did not delay in exposing the temporal or pecuniary advantages. Later, he also showed that, in view of social prejudice, it would be convenient to dissimulate the exercise of such a legitimate right, which was to exercise venality and hypocrisy at the same time, that is, to deserve twice. And he went down, and up, examined everything, rectified everything. It is clear that she fought the forgiveness of injuries and other maxims of mildness and cordiality. He did not formally forbid gratuitous slander, but induced it to be exercised by retribution, either pecuniary, or of another kind, in cases, however, where it was an imperious expansion of imaginative force, and nothing else. It prohibited receiving any salary, since it was equivalent to paying for perspiration. All forms of respect were condemned by him as possible elements of a certain social and personal decorum, saves, however, the only exception of interest. But this same exception was soon eliminated, on the consideration that interest, converting respect into mere flattery, was the sentiment applied and not that. To complete the work, the devil understood that he had to cut through all human solidarity. Indeed, love of neighbor was a serious obstacle to the new institution. He showed that this rule was a simple invention of parasites and insolvent traders. One should give one's neighbor nothing but indifference, in some cases, hatred or contempt. He even went so far as to demonstrate that the notion of neighbor was wrong, and quoted this phrase of a priest from Naples, that fine and learned Gallieni, who wrote to one of the marquesas of the old regulation, "May the neighbor disappear forever." The only hypothesis in which he allowed himself to love his neighbor was when it was a question of loving other people's ladies, because this kind of love had the particularity of being nothing more than the individual's love for himself. And as some disciples thought that such an explanation, by metaphysics, escaped the understanding of the crowds, the devil resorted to an apologist. 800 people take shares in a bank, for common operations, but each shareholder really cares only about his dividends. This is what happens to adulterers. This apologue was included in the Book of Wisdom. Chapter 4. Fringes and Fringes. The devil's prediction came true. All the virtues whose velvet cape ended in a cotton fringe, once pulled by the fringe, threw their cape to the nettles and came to enlist in the new church. The others followed, and time blessed the institution. The church had been founded, the doctrine spread, there was not a region of the globe that did not know it, a language that did not translate it, a race that did not love it. The devil raised the cries of triumph. One day, however, long years later, the devil noticed that many of his faithful, in secret, practiced the ancient virtues. Not all of them, not fully, but some, in parts, and, as I say, in secret. Certain gluttons retired to eat frugally 3 or 4 times a year, precisely on days of Catholic rule. Many misers gave alms at night or in the sparsely populated streets. Several extortioners of the treasury returned small sums to him. The fraudsters spoke, at one time or another, with their hearts in their hands, but with the same dissimulated face, to make one believe that they were deceiving others. The discovery astonished the devil. He got to know evil more directly, and saw that he cultivated a lot. Some cases were even incomprehensible, like that of the pharmacist from the Levant, who had poisoned an entire generation for a long time and, with the drug's product, helped the victim's children. In Cairo he found a perfect camel thief, who hid his face to go to the mosques. The devil met him at the entrance of one, threw the procedure in his face. He denied it, saying that he was going there to steal a dragoman's camel. Indeed, he stole it in the sight of the devil and went to give it as a gift to a muezzin, who prayed for it to Allah. The Benedictine manuscript cites many other extraordinary discoveries, among them this one, which completely disoriented the devil. One of his best apostles was a Calabrian man, 50 years old, an outstanding forger of documents, who had a beautiful house in the Roman campaign, canvases, statues, library, etc. It was fraud personified. He even got into bed so as not to confess that he was healthy. For this man not only did not steal from the game, but also gave bonuses to the servants. Having achieved the friendship of a canon, she went every week to confess to him in a solitary chapel, and while he did not reveal any of his secret actions to him, he crossed himself twice, when he knelt down, and when he rose. The devil could hardly believe such blasphemy. But there was no doubt, the case was true. He didn't stop for a moment. The astonishment did not give him time to reflect, compare and conclude from the present spectacle something analogous to the past. He flew up to the sky again, trembling with rage, anxious to know the secret cause of such a singular phenomenon. God heard him with infinite complacency. He did not interrupt him, he did not rebuke him, he did not triumph, not even, of that satanic agony. He laid eyes on him, and said, "What do you want, my poor devil? Cotton capes now have silk fringes, as velvet capes had cotton fringes. What do you want? It is the eternal human contradiction."
If you like our channel, subscribe, like, activate the bell to receive our news.